I was born on an island where silence was stronger than law. It wasn't written down in books, it wasn't shouted at children, it wasn't even explained. You grew up learning it the way you learn not to touch fire, by watching the way grown faces hardened, by listening to conversations end in the middle, by feeling the weight of words that wanted to be spoken but weren't. And that silence was always about one thing: the other island. It sat in plain sight, close enough that you could see its cliffs and trees even from the village shore. Half a mile away, no more. Sometimes clear as daylight, sometimes half hidden in fog, but always there. A dark green shape hunched low in the sea. We all saw it. We all knew it. But no one ever said a word. When I was very small, I asked my mother about it. I remember the moment. I had been playing on the rocks, stacking shells, and I pointed across the water and said, "What's that place?" She went still, not angry, not frightened, just still, like she'd turned into stone. She looked down at me and pressed her finger to her lips, and that was the end of it. She never answered. She never needed to. From then on, I understood. That was the rule. But I was not alone in breaking it inside my own heart. There were four of us who were inseparable, boys who moved like one body: Jonah, Sam, Eli, and Nathan, and me. We spent every spare hour together, chasing each other through the fields, sneaking fruit from the orchards, swimming until our skin shriveled. We laughed the same laugh. We shared secrets. We even took punishments together when one of us was caught. We were brothers, not by blood, but blood by choice. And together, we carried the same quiet fascination: that shadowed island. We never dared say it aloud, not where ears might overhear. But when we were sure we were alone, when the wind was loud and no adults were near, we whispered our guesses. Sam was certain it held treasure: chests buried in its soil, coins gleaming beneath its trees. Eli swore he saw flickers of light out there at night, as though lanterns moved among the branches. Nathan teased him, said it was only fireflies, though his voice always cracked when he said it. Jonah said nothing at all, but he stared longer than any of us. I often caught him on the rocks at dusk, watching the island with a look like he was listening to a voice none of us could hear. The only soul who ever crossed the water was the trader. Once a week, without fail, his weathered gray boat would appear out of the fog. He brought flour, oil, tools, things we could not make ourselves. He spoke little. He never smiled. When he left, he rowed east, always east, toward the island we did not name. None of us admitted we watched him go, but of course we all did, and then one morning Jonah finally broke the silence between us. We were in the cove, our pockets heavy with flat stones, competing to see whose throw could skip the farthest. The sea was calm. The horizon was clear. Jonah stood with his back to us, his eyes fixed on that forbidden shape. He tossed his stone, let it sink, and then he said, as though it were nothing, "One day we should go." 7 words. That was all. But in that instant, it felt as though we had already agreed. We didn't argue, we didn't laugh it off. The idea leapt into us and rooted there, as natural as breathing. Of course we would go. Of course. We waited for the right time. Weeks passed. We said nothing to anyone. And then came a night with hardly any moonlight, when the village was heavy with sleep. That was when we stole the skiff. It was a forgotten little boat at the edge of the dock, half rotted, patched more times than I could count. We carried with us what scraps we could gather: half a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth, 2 flasks of water, a length of rope, a dull knife, Eli's cracked compass, Sam's hammer. Jonah brought nothing that I saw. Perhaps he believed we would not need anything. We pushed off before dawn. The sea was darker than night, black glass broken by our oars. Mist closed around us, swallowing the mainland until it was gone, as though the world had shrunk to nothing but us and the island ahead. We barely spoke. Every sound seemed too loud. The silence pressed against our ears, reminding us we were doing something the sea itself might punish. That was when the shapes appeared beneath us. At first, I thought it was seaweed, long blacks drifting below. But then one shape curved, another flicked past, circling. They were larger than fish, smoother than wood. They brushed the hull, made it tremble. Then one struck hard, jolting the skiff. "Sharks," Sam whispered, though his voice shook. Jonah shook his head. "Reef?" he said. But before I could ask what he meant, the boat slammed against something unseen. Wood screamed. Water poured in. Another impact came, harder, and the skiff split apart beneath us. The sea swallowed us whole. The cold was a fist around my chest. Salt clawed into my throat. For a moment, there was no up, no down, only black water pressing from every side. I flailed, kicked until my hands scraped stone. I dragged myself onto a narrow beach of jagged rock, coughing until my ribs ached. One by one, the others crawled up beside me, soaked and shivering. The skiff was gone. Everything we had carried, gone. We were 5 boys alone on the island we were never meant to touch. At first glance, it looked so much like home, trees, sand, cliffs. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it seemed. The trees leaned inward too far, as though listening. The stones were sharper, their edges like teeth. The grass held a hue I'd never seen, almost metallic, green but with a sheen that turned your stomach. The air itself smelled thick, sweet, and sour at once, like fruit left to rot. It was as if the land had studied our island and tried to make a copy, but a copy that missed something essential. We found a path winding upward into the woods. We followed. The silence there was heavy, pressing, as though the branches bent to muffle us, and then we saw her. She stood on a slope ahead, tall, impossibly tall, her arms too long, her neck bent slightly as though her head weighed too much. Her dress clung to her as if it were wet. She didn't move until we stopped. Then she tilted her head just a little and smiled. It was a smile pulled the wrong way. Crooked, too wide, bent downward instead of up. But her eyes were soft, tender, the way a mother might look at her child. She raised one long finger. For a moment I thought she was pointing at me, but Eli whispered, "Not us. Look above us." We turned, and there they were, 5 figures among the trees. Ourselves, or almost. They wore our clothes, they had our faces, but reversed, mirrored, bent just wrong. Their eyes were wide and unblinking. Their stillness was worse than a scream. And then she did scream. The sound split the air like lightning. It rattled inside my bones, scraped at my skull. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, but it was useless. The sound was in me as much as outside me. It lasted forever. It lasted 1 heartbeat. And then it stopped. The doubles were gone. She was gone. The air still quivered, as though it remembered. We stumbled forward, desperate to move, desperate not to stop. The path led to a clearing, and in it stood a house. At first it looked like one of ours. Small, weathered wood, a sagging porch. But every detail was wrong. Curtains like the ones in Nathan's home, but reversed. A clock ticked too slow, half a beat behind. A painting of a river hung crooked, and the water in it seemed to flow uphill. On a shelf were photographs of people we knew, but mirrored, their smiles bent at strange angles. We called Nathan's name. My voice cracked each time. We searched the rooms, and then suddenly, he was there, on the porch, smiling, saying he just stepped outside for a moment. But his smile was too careful, as if practiced. His eyes darted from face to face, as though he was waiting for us to accept him. Before I could speak, Eli screamed. She came from the trees, the tall woman holding him. Holding Eli as if he were a child, struggling in her arms. She rocked him gently, her eyes soft, her smile bent wrong. She looked at us as though she wanted to comfort us, and then she raised her hand and waved. Eli went still. The rest is a blur. I don't remember the crossing. I remember salt burning my throat, copper light on the waves, silence between us heavy as stone. The village was waiting at the dock. They counted us. Their faces went pale when they saw Nathan. They knew. His laugh was hollow. His smile bent wrong. Something in him was thin, stretched, as though he were only an imitation. That night, they walked him to the sea. No anger, no grief, just necessity. They held him under until the tide claimed him. By morning, no one spoke his name. The silence had grown sharper. It was no longer just about the other island. It was about what came back. Years have passed. I am older. But I see her still in my dreams, the woman with the gentle eyes and the broken smile. I hear Eli's scream. I wonder if Nathan was ever truly gone, or if he still walks through mirrored rooms, smiling that smile. I believe now that the other island is not just land. It is a hunger. It studies us, tries to copy us, but it never gets it right. And what it gives back cannot last. That is my truth. I rarely speak it. Silence is safer, but someone must remember. So I tell you this, if ever you stand on my shore and the fog clears and you see that dark shape on the horizon, do not name it. Do not even think its name too loudly. Keep the silence, because some silences are not rules. They are shields. And if you break them, you will learn, as we did, what it costs to meet a smile shaped the wrong way.